Best episode. This right here was so good. Like, I thought the T'Challa Star-Lord episode and like the Doctor Strange episode from last week, I thought those were good. But this episode is on a whole nother level because I was already excited for this episode. I mean, you tell me we're getting zombie Avengers and zombie Hunter Spider-Man and all this other stuff. Like, sign me up. Like, I'm ready for this thing. And I was already excited for this episode. But actually watching it, there is so much more, because I thought, it's just going to be the base level thing. Oh, it's Zombie Hunter Spider-Man just battling some zombies, and sure, that would have been cool, but there's so much more in this episode. There's so many more layers to it. Like, for example, specifically characters. Like, there were so many characters popping up in this episode, both as zombies and actual survivor members. So that was awesome, especially because for the majority of them, I think the actual MCU actors returned to voice them in this episode. So that was cool to see. And also there's some huge comic references, not only with just like some characterizations here, like that big Spider-Man one. If you saw the episode, then you know what I'm talking about. But there's also some huge references to the actual Marvel Zombies comics run as well, which was some really cool stuff. So guys, we've got to talk about this thing because there is a lot that happened in this episode, and I just need to talk about this beautiful masterpiece that just blessed my Disney Plus screen, because so good. But of course, if you haven't seen this episode yet, then spoiler warning. Of course, Marvel What If episode 5, What If Zombies, because you don't need any more explanation than that than just zombies. That says it all. So anyway, this episode takes place during Avengers Infinity War, as I mentioned the other day in my video breaking down everything we know about this episode so far. So we start off during basically the beginning of Avengers Infinity War, where of course after that battle with Thanos up in space between Thor and the Asgardians and everything, Hulk is sent down to Earth by Heimdall, and that's where we start off this episode. So Hulk is on his way to Earth, and it's taking place during Avengers Infinity War, and of course he lands in the Sanctum Sanctorum, but instead of Doctor Strange and Wong finding him, there is nobody around. It's complete silence. There is nobody around on Earth, so he goes outside, and just as happened in that movie, just minus Iron Man and Doctor Strange and Wong, Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian, of course the children of Thanos, members of the Black Order, they show up and come looking for the Time Stone. And they're basically about to take down Bruce because he can't Hulk out at this point in time, because Hulk is kind of scared right now. But then all of a sudden, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Wong, they do show up, but something happened to them because now they are zombies. So they take down Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian, and I guess technically save Bruce, but then they're also going after him after this because, again, they're zombies. They're trying to infect everyone. So Bruce is definitely in some trouble here, but luckily Wasp actually saves him. So she shows up here, as well as, of course, Spider-Man, which, also speaking of Spider-Man, it's not Josh Keaton doing the voice. That is something I want to mention, because I did do a video yesterday saying, like, oh, yeah, it's confirmed. Well, I guess not. So, sorry about that. Would have been awesome, but it wasn't him. It wasn't Tom Holland either. But I do feel like the voice actor for this was actually pretty good. It didn't really sound like Tom Holland, but I think was a pretty solid Spider-Man voice and channeled like the attributes of Tom Holland Spider-Man. So I enjoyed seeing that. But then we flash back to 2 weeks earlier, where we find out how this whole thing started. And as a lot of you have been theorizing, during Ant-Man and the Wasp, of course, Hank Pym goes into the quantum realm to save his wife, Janet Van Dyne, but apparently this time she was exposed to a quantum virus which infected her, turned her into a zombie, turned Hank Pym into a zombie, and then, of course, they came back up through the quantum realm, and then they were brought to Earth. They brought this whole virus to Earth and just started turning people into zombies, and just the zombies have now been unleashed. The Avengers come to try and help and take down the zombies, but of course they get infected pretty easily. So yeah, bad news. This is some really big bad news here. But then we get back to present day, where I love how Spider-Man is making a how to survive the zombie apocalypse video, referencing back to, of course, like Spider-Man Homecoming, the beginning of that movie, when it showed that like he made a kind of like a vlog during his time in Civil War and all that stuff. So that was a really nice reference that I enjoyed seeing here. Plus it was just a really funny video, and it was like going over the rules of like zombies and how to survive this zombie apocalypse. And then we get to see our full team of survivors for the zombie apocalypse, and as described in the synopsis, it definitely is a ragtag team. Like, first of all, we got Happy Hogan, because of course we do. We got Kurt, of course, member of X-Con, friend of Scott Lang, and if he's here, and obviously Scott was infected early in the episode, but I think this means that they got to Luis. Oh, man. It honestly would have been hilarious if Luis was here in this episode, and then he was like recapping everything during the zombie apocalypse. That would have been hilarious. But he's nowhere to be seen here. But we do have Kurt. We also got Bucky, Sharon Carter, and also Okoye. So all of those characters are still alive. They have somehow survived this zombie apocalypse. Happy is even using like an Iron Man repulsor. So that was really cool to see. But the zombies end up getting him actually pretty quickly. He's the first to go when the team is searching for some more survivors. Hawkeye and Falcon show up. Of course, zombie Hawkeye and Falcon. And then Doctor Strange's cape saves Spider-Man, so that's how he gets the Cloak of Levitation kind of like in his hands. So that was cool to see. And then basically our squad retreats to the train, and I think they said that they were going to Camp Leeway, which of course I believe is the like the army base that Steve Rogers trained at back in Captain America the First Avenger, and we saw it pop up again in Captain America the Winter Soldier, and also when they went back in time in Avengers Endgame. So that was a nice little reference. I don't think we really spent too much time there, but it was still really cool to see. But then Captain America attacks their train, and well, first of all, he takes out Sharon, so Sharon Carter is off the table. She is done, and then Bucky actually goes ahead and takes down Captain America, and he's like, oh, it's the end of the line. Of course, another reference to like a classic line, classic quotable line from Bucky in the MCU, and Steve Rogers, nice back and forth thing, so I enjoyed seeing that. But then Hope, of course, aka Wasp, she gets bit. And this is one thing I was wondering about, like, how come when she gets bit, like, it's like such a delay of, like, it takes her a while to actually turn into a zombie, when, like, everybody else, if they get bit, they just automatically turn into a zombie. I was a little confused by that. It's not like Avengers Infinity War, where it's like the reason Peter was able to hold on so long from being snapped is because of his spider sense and his spider powers or anything. So I was a little confused about that, how that exactly worked. But it leads to this great moment, because of course she is dying. She admits that. She basically faces that, and she's not afraid to die. But Peter reminds her, like, sometimes you just have to smile. Like, even when things are down, like, no matter how much you've lost, you just need to smile. And she's like, how do you do that? And he talks about his loss, everybody he's lost in his life. Of course, Mr. Stark, Iron Man, both his mom and his dad, and Uncle Ben. Oh my god, this was such a great moment. He referenced Uncle Ben. This is our first, well, technically not our first Uncle Ben reference in the MCU, because in Spider-Man Far From Home, he did have a suitcase with Uncle Ben's initials on it, but we never got to see, like, a flashback of, like, Uncle Ben's death or anything like that, which may or may not be a good thing, having to suffer through that thing again. But this is the first real time that he's bringing up, and this is such a great moment because, you know, we never really knew for sure if this was something that happened in the MCU, because, again, we never really knew for sure. Like, he never mentioned it at all. He didn't really seem to be affected by a huge loss in the movies, and well, Tony Stark basically kind of filled that role of Uncle Ben for this character. So this was just so awesome, saying that he lost his Uncle Ben. I mean, obviously it's not awesome, but it's great to hear that Uncle Ben does exist in this universe and he is dead, which again is not really something to be, you know, excited about, but at the same time, it is in this special scenario. So that was such a huge thing. I absolutely loved that. But Hope, again, that was a great scene, great moment between Hope and Peter. I absolutely loved that. Probably my favorite scene in the episode. But then Hope goes full giant woman, of course, as we've seen Scott do as Giant Man. So she grows to like the size of a building. She goes full giant woman again because she got bit, so she's going to be turned into a zombie anyway. So she sacrifices herself and gets everyone to safety on the other side of this giant zombie army. And then she dies. Of course, the zombies get to her. She falls down. And this was one of our first references to the Marvel Zombies run in the comics, where there actually is like this iconic shot where it's actually I think it was actually Hank Pym specifically as Giant Man. He was a zombie and he was taken down, and it's just like this iconic shot of just the dead Giant Man body in the middle of a field. And because again it's so giant, it's like the size of a building, so it's just this giant dead body just laying there, and it ended up being like a landmark or like something like that. So that was honestly a really awesome reference, and again switching it up with characters and making it Wasp this time. But it was so cool also to just see her go giant woman mode and to see that great reference to the comics. So I thought that was really cool too. But then our survivors, they actually end up finding Vision. When they do make their way to Camp Leeway, they find Vision. So of course Vision's alive because, well, he's a robot, so it's not like the Visions can, the zombies can get him anyway. And he's been working on a cure. And at the beginning of the episode, in the flashback, it did show that Scott Lang did get infected and he became a zombie. But here, Scott is now alive because Vision has now cured him, except it's only his head. So throughout this whole episode, we just have Scott Lang head in a jar, basically, which was so weird but so awesome at the same time. And like, speaking of Scott, he was so funny. Like that's one of the things about this episode, is because, like, you know, it's a dark, horrific episode with like zombies and everything and like all these characters dying, but there's also so much comedy. Like, all these characters, like, they get some really cool comedic moments. Like, of course, you get the more heartfelt moments, like that Uncle Ben Hope moment as well. But just everything from Scott in a jar was awesome. I love that. Paul Rudd, of course, doing the voice. That was amazing. But then Bucky goes to respond to a distress signal, where Bucky finds T'Challa. So T'Challa's alive. Chadwick Boseman, of course, doing the voice again. They did confirm that he was returning for, I think it was either 3 or 4 episodes other than his T'Challa Star-Lord episode. So he's going to be back in a couple more. So I'm really excited to see that. And he's actually had an amputated leg. And this, again, is another thing from the comics where Black Panther was specifically targeted by the zombies. And he did lose his leg as well. So, again, another great reference. Absolutely love to see that. But turns out Vision betrayed them, and this whole thing was a trap because he lured all of these survivors basically to their death so that he could sacrifice them for his zombie bride, which of course is Wanda Maximoff, because at this point in time, during Avengers Infinity War, these two are alive. I don't really know how Wanda was able to get infected. I mean, she's like this crazy powerful character. How did the zombies even touch her? But somehow they did, and now Vision just took things to a whole nother level of creepy. And yeah, he's just luring people here to sacrifice for his zombie bride, even though like she can't even talk to him or anything. Like, that's clearly he's holding on to the past. But also, who can blame him? I mean, Wanda is a very nice lady, even in zombie form, except when she kills a bunch of characters here. So that's basically what happens here. Kurt is the first to go. He doesn't last very long here. Then Okoye, so she dies. And then Vision, this was one part I did not really understand, because Vision is like, alright, you know, I actually kind of feel bad about this, so to atone for what I did, he rips out the Mind Stone from his head and like gives it to the survivors and is like, yeah, take this and everything. And like, sure, that can be used to make a cure and all that stuff. But also at the same time, you'd think that like Vision is their most powerful weapon. So him staying alive would actually be better and more beneficial and would lead to more of them making it out of there alive. And then rip it out later. You know, that would have made more sense. But nah, he just rips it out and just dead Vision once again. Oh my god, Vision has died like 5 times in the MCU already. Leave him alone, Marvel. He's, oh, Vision. But anyway, yep, so he sacrifices himself, and then we get this great moment of Bucky wielding Captain America's shield, and he goes 1v1 versus Scarlet Witch. And he's taken out pretty easily, and we don't actually see him die. She kind of just like flings him like across the yard, so we never actually see a dead body or anything, but we do kind of have to assume that like, yeah, he's probably dead because he's not one of our survivors by the end of the episode. Because then we also have Bruce Banner, who has been Bruce Banner this whole time. He's finally able to Hulk out. He goes 1v1 versus Scarlet Witch. we don't really see how that turns out. So maybe he survived, maybe he didn't. Again, we don't know for sure. But he's buying the team some time. So now we have our 3 remaining survivors. We've got Spider-Man, we've got T'Challa, and we've got Scott Lang. And so these are the only 3 characters that are alive, and they are taking the Mind Stone to Wakanda. And during this scene, we get another one of those great, super powerful moments, super heartfelt, emotional moments, where Spider-Man's like, oh, we've lost so much and all this stuff. And then T'Challa has a great reference back to Captain America Civil War, where he says, in my culture, death is not the end. And he goes on, and oh, like, that is such a huge quote from Captain America Civil War, and especially with, of course, the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman. Like, it hits so hard, and especially in this moment, like, man, it got me in the feels, and I loved it so much. It was such a great moment. But again, they're going to save the day, so we got our 3 Avengers remaining, and they're going to take the Mind Stone to Wakanda so that they can hopefully make a cure. But I don't think that's going to happen, because then our final shot of this episode is who's waiting for them in Wakanda, but of course Thanos, but not just regular Thanos, it's zombie Thanos with all of the Infinity Stones, except the Mind Stone. So they're literally bringing the Mind Stone to him, and as the Watcher says, like, yeah, this is the end of the universe. So, wow, what an ending. This was absolutely an insane episode. Again, I loved it. There was so much going on in this episode, so many crazy characters popping up, so many great moments. I loved it so much, and I can't wait to see where we go in next week's episode. I don't really know for sure what it is, because last week we thought this episode was supposed to be the Party Thor episode, so maybe that's next week. Again, I don't know for sure. I think actually it might be the Eric Killmonger episode, where like Eric Killmonger and Tony Stark become friends. I feel like that might be what it be, but then again, I don't really know for sure. But guys, anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about this episode of Marvel What If? What did you think about What If Zombies? Again, this is definitely my favorite episode. I loved it so much. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button so I can keep up to date on everything that goes on in the Marvel life.